This video is going to deal with the real number properties of multiplication. The first property is the multiplicative property of 0. And basically, the multiplicative property of 0 tells us that when we multiply a number by 0, the answer will always be 0. In mathematical terms, that will look like a times 0 equals 0. Basically saying that any real number a multiplied by 0 will be 0. So for example, 3 times 0 equals 0. And that's all that multiplicative property of 0 tells us. The identity property of multiplication tells us that any number multiplied by 1 will still be that number. For example, a times 1 equals a. We can multiply something by 1 as many times as we like, and we're still not going to change its value. For example, 4 times 1 still equals 4. The commutative property of multiplication is very similar to the commutative property of addition. Changing the order of the factors will not affect the product. So in the case of multiplication, a times b is the same as b times a. We can multiply the numbers in any order we like, and it's not going to change the answer. For example, 2 times 5 is going to be the same as 5 times 2. They're both going to equal 10. Continuing on, we have the associative property of multiplication. And the associative property of multiplication tells us that if we change the grouping of 3 or more factors, it's not going to affect the answer. So similar to the associative property of addition, if we have a times the quantity b times c, that's going to be the same as the quantity of a times b times c. All we've done is grouped the numbers differently. So for example, if we had 2 times the quantity 3 times 5, that's going to be the same as the quantity 2 times 3 times 5. In the first one, 3 times 5 is 15. 15 times 2 is 30. In the second one, the quantity 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 times 5 is also 30. Notice when we group the numbers differently, it does not affect the answer. Our final property is the distributive property of multiplication over addition. And in mathematical terms, this looks like this. We have a quantity that's going to be a sum, b plus c, and we're going to multiply that sum by another number, a. Well, that's the same as taking that a and multiplying him by every term before we add. So a sum multiplied by a factor is equal to the sum of that factor multiplied by each add-end. So for an example, if we say a is 4, and b and c are going to be 1 and 3 respectively, this is going to be the same as if we take that 4 and multiply them by 1, and then take the 4 and multiply them by 3, and then add them together. So 4 times 1 plus 4 times 3. Well, in the first instance, 1 plus 3 is 4, and 4 times 4 is going to give us 16. In the second instance, 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 3 is 12, that also gives us 16.